So SB Nation feels like a Green Bay Packers market where it's like a small market, intimate mom and pop type of business, but it still gets a lot of media attention. How do you think the state of the sports blog in general has differed from when you first started? And if the sports blog is changing for the better?
Yeah, I mean, SB Nation encompasses a pretty wide variety of things. That's part of the reason our video team and our product have been renamed as Secret Bases, to just sort of distinguish, like, we do this thing, other people do a different thing that's also called SB Nation. Um, when I first got into SB Nation, I was a kid. I was in high school, and I founded our Knicks blog in 2007, 2008. Um, 2007. And at the time, SB Nation was just a constellation of totally amateur run team blogs. No one was making any real money. No one really had a full-time job. Uh, that's all that sports blogging was. In the intervening period, obviously, writing about sports in a way separate from journalism, writing about sports as a fan, writing about sports purely for the internet, writing about sports without any access, is a thing now. It's something you can do for a living. And SB Nation in that time has gone from having a real big national footprint and reporting and having full-timers that works on sort of a centralized national team and aren't team bloggers. We did a bunch of that. And then in the last couple of years, in a way that's been, I think, accelerated by the pandemic, layoffs have hit the company pretty hard, and we're sort of back to, we have this video thing that I do, but then it's mostly team blogging, and a lot of it is sort of done by full-timers who cover a bunch of different bases and maybe aren't as not necessarily fans of the teams that they're writing about, aren't necessarily writing about only one team, but are still trying to provide sort of a localized perspective. So the market has certainly changed in ways that I am not smart or worldly enough to identify, but SB Nation has sort of cannibalized itself several times over and taken on different forms over the whole time I've been working there. And it went from, we're trying to be ESPN a little bit, to like kind of retreating to what things used to be. And it's a much smaller outfit than it was a few years ago, but still much bigger than it was when I got on board.
So you said you started a Knicks blog while you were in high school with SB Nation. Like, how did that even come about? That sounds like something that would be kind of crazy nowadays, to work with SB Nation and create your own Knicks blog. So how did that even come about when you were at like such a young age?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think SB Nation is, like you said, not ESPN. It's not one of the biggest names in sports media, but it's something now. And, some big names have worked for us or have worked for us. But yeah, when I was in high school, SB Nation started long before Vox Media existed, long before, it had a CEO and like a proper corporate edifice. SB Nation was just a smattering of amateur run team blogs. It was kids, it was lawyers doing something in their free time. It was students at the actual colleges they were covering. And it was a bunch of baseball blogs. I think maybe by that point, all 32 teams, whatever it is, however many baseball teams there are. And then like a handful of NBA blogs. And they didn't have a Knicks blog. And I was a kid who was a Knicks fan who started my own, when I was a junior or senior in high school, started my own just like blogspot Knicks blog, with no background, no credential, no nothing. I was just a kid having fun in my free time. But I commented at some of the SB Nation blogs. And, this is before Twitter. I just, by commenting places and occasionally emailing writers I liked at SB Nation, someone figured out that I existed and had a Knicks blog. And so when they were like, hey, we don't have a Knicks blog yet, they thought, hey, maybe this 17-year-old can start our Knicks blog. And posting and toasting is still, SB Nation's Knicks blog. And I founded that when I was a kid.
That's so cool, honestly, to be able to make that when you're so young. I guess my next question would just be like, how did it progress over the years, as you went through college and after, to the point where you're still working with SB Nation?
Well, a long version of that story could take quite a while, but basically, I was like I said, I founded the Knicks blog in high school, and when I went to college, I kept doing it. I skipped enough parties and like just was boring enough in college that I was the one in my dorm room on Friday nights, watching a 10:30 game where the Knicks got the shit kicked out of them by the Suns or whatever it was. And so I kept doing it, and I built a little bit of a following. The Knicks had training camp at my college a couple years while I was there, just dumb luck. And that helped me, sneak my way into a little bit of access and some actual reporting. So that helped. And basically I didn't study journalism or anything close to it. I went to a college that didn't have a real sports program or a real journalism program.
Hey, just like us.
Yeah.
For real.
So I was just covering the Knicks for fun and doing it basically for free. But by the time I graduated college, which again was a college, an undergraduate study program I was going to go to grad school for neuroscience. I was not interested. I was not headed in a sports media direction. But by the time I graduated college, I had been offered, part-time writing gigs here and there. I was writing regularly for New York Magazine's now defunct sports vertical. I was, SB Nation had developed into more of a real thing during the time I was in college, and I was doing, copy editing for $100 here or there, doing some regional sort of just recapping of games. And so when I graduated, instead of paying to go to grad school, I was like, someone's paying me a little bit. Might as well see if this will work out. And that was a very bad decision. And I didn't make any money for a couple of years and was about ready to quit. And then SB Nation offered me a full-time job doing social media. So I and Roger Sherman, who's now at The Ringer, who's a wonderful person, ran SB Nation's social media for a couple of years. That turned into making social video. If you remember the era when every media company was convinced that just doing whatever Facebook wanted was a good idea. I was the person at SB Nation writing scripts for like totally garbage, cynical 90-second square videos with subtitles. And then the Facebook money dried up and they were like, well, do you want to keep doing video? And I said, sure. And so now I work on the video team.
And now we're here.
And that's my story. But now I'm having fun and working on stuff that's actually rewarding.
That's cool though. You want sounds like a lot of obstacles and you're able to overcome a lot of them. What I wanted to ask next was, sometimes I'll scroll like a journalism job subreddit and I'll see so many people talking about this is a terrible time to be a journalist, which is partially true because obviously the lack of opportunities. But I feel like you can make the argument that this is the most appropriate time for journalism because a lot of companies, especially in print, they'll dial back on the number of workers. But you'd think these people would have more time to write and work since most of us are sitting at home. I guess I just wanted to ask what you thought about just that in general.
Well, to start with, there's journalism and there's media. I would not call myself a journalist. I am not here breaking news, reporting, doing anything important. Plenty of journalists do things that aren't important, like sports journalists. But anyway, yeah, we really could use some journalists right now. There's a lot happening. There's more happening than everyone could possibly cover. And for there to be layoffs taking place, over this past year has really hurt the average human being's ability to understand the massive and terrifying just deluge of information, just stuff that's happening constantly. I think I agree with the general sentiment that it's a bad time to be a journalist or to work in media at all. I think that for better or worse, most media digital or otherwise, is currently built on a advertising structure. Most, there are a few examples, encouraging examples, both in print and digital, of media companies that run on people actually buying their product. You have newspapers like the New York Times that get subscriptions and do fine no matter what, and they sell ads, but like the subscribers are what keeping them afloat. There's stuff like The Athletic that, it's hard to tell with all the money they've had invested and all the money that they spend, whether that's succeeding, but I really hope so. But for the most part, websites like SB Nation, and then also real journalistic, hard-hitting, political, cultural outfits, are depending on selling ads. And I think there's a bubble there that we're watching burst, that's not a real solid way to make money. And I think that the companies that advertise with those sorts of websites and print publications are realizing this is not even remotely worth it, that selling ads on journalism, on media, isn't worth the money. And I think companies like mine have for the last few years, even before the pandemic, had to sit back and say, damn, no one actually pays for our product. Someone else pays us to annoy people on our product with ads. And cutting out that middleman and figuring out a way to sell the stuff that we do, which is good. I think that the work I do at Secret Base is good. It's not cynical Facebook garbage. I think it's something that people are, actually find value in. But we still haven't figured out a way to make people pay for it. We're still selling ads on it, and there's still some money to be made there, but I worry long-term for that. This is all a long way of saying, I think that the entire industry is under threat, and that's why you see layoffs. And I think that some really smart companies will figure out that, yeah, of course people are going to pay to know what's happening. Of course people are going to pay for, content, for stuff that's entertaining, that keeps them abreast of unimportant things. But certain companies are built to survive that bubble bursting, others aren't. And in the meantime, people are going to lose their jobs. People are going to struggle to find jobs. Like I said, I feel extremely lucky looking around at the industry, looking around at my own company. I don't think my still having a job is a product of me being particularly talented or doing particularly good work. I'm proud of the work I do. I love the people I work with and think, that we do a good job, but so do a lot of people. And a lot of those people are looking for work right now.
Yeah. I was going to say too, what you were talking about, I think you went on record saying you've tried to do like the reporting gig before and like keeping up with daily news and how it was kind of a chore for you. It's kind of fitting how you're on this podcast right now, since you've talked about that. And we're trying to do that too, because I feel like we'll upload an episode and it's like, yeah, we edited it, especially in the off season. And then within that same day, just the relevancy of it is just expired. It's like, yeah, the Knicks signed so-and-so. It's already been 2 days late. When did you want to begin to cover these sports topics that were able to stand the test of time as opposed to just like doing recaps?
Yeah. I mean, I listen, I've done all kinds of stuff. I've never really done proper beat reporting, and I've never broken stories or I've had sources. I've kind of poked at that a little bit, but like you got at, I've done some blogging. I've done some feature writing. I've done some of the quick turnaround, just sort of like, here's the thing that happened on TV. Here's 50 words about it. I've done that kind of writing. And like you said, a explicit and really firm mission of Secret Base, of the work I do now, is to make stuff that's evergreen. And there's something to be said for both approaches. On one hand, something awesome can be happening in the world. Something could be really cool in last night's game. And I feel the pinch now and then to just be like, I just want to write like 50 words about this thing, get it over with, and forget about it tomorrow. Because I think, there's a lot that's just a cheap way to get people to look at your stuff and see the ads that we're still selling on it. And it costs me nothing to do it. It would take me an hour to write that post, and it could probably make the company a lot of money. And I think and generate commentary and things that are less cynical than that. But there's something to be said for that. But I will say that for my own sensibilities, for the kind of work I have found that I like to do, and for a feeling of validation that lasts a little longer than that and, doesn't need to be constantly replenished, there is something to be said for what we call evergreen content, for intentionally making stuff that isn't utterly divorced from what is happening in the real world. We try to make things that contextualize the news, that help you understand what you're seeing on TV and what you're seeing on Twitter. I actually, my bot Will, our executive producer, was just this morning showing me like, hey, here's the videos that have gotten the most attention this year. And one of them is our episode of Collapsed about the Chicago Bulls that I think I made last year. That's one of the most watched videos we have this year. And the reason for that is obvious. There was The Last Dance that took up an entire month and a half of people's attention over the summer. And when people watched that, they went and Googled Chicago Bulls in the 1990s and they found our thing. And, we offered context without even knowing we were doing it. We offered something for people to refer to that we had made months, maybe even a year prior, but it still held up. And so I think that there's a lot of value in that. It's fun to make. It's fun to see that stuff pop later. And it does mean that while publications with a different sort of turnaround time and a different ethos in terms of thing happens, get it, don't worry about spending weeks working on something, don't worry about making sure something is evergreen. They can write, here's what happened on the Last Dance last night. Here's a quick explanation of, Horace Grant and Michael Jordan not being friends, and they can react. And we don't have that, that organ, and we miss it sometimes. It means we leave attention on the table because we're not there to be like, here's the best gifts from The Last Dance last night. And there is fine work to be done there, but it does mean that a thing I made a year or two ago could hold up now. And if someone's looking for it, or if someone stumbles across it on some rabbit hole, or if something happens in the world, in the sports world that sort of strikes that nerve, then, there we are. I sort of think of us as like almost a wiki or like an encyclopedia of sports stuff as much as we are a publication, that it's something you can turn to at any time.
Yeah, it's nice because with Rewinder, Beef History, Collapse, I think some people get caught up in sports as if it's strictly polarizing with just off-court relations and on-court analysis, but you obviously can't have one without the other. And I guess it's nice, those series that I just mentioned, that in a particular play in a high-stakes game, there's all these variety of intertwined narratives that, there's a lot of things and context regarding this, sometimes 5 years prior, off the court relations. And I guess it's just nice that you really do need one and the other, not just one alone. You both need the off and on court type of relations and analysis too.
Yeah, for sure. And I like sports because I like watching sports. I'm not that interested in the off court stuff, whatever.
I call them tabloids.
Yeah, whatever, Beef History might suggest otherwise, but I really like the sports for the watching of the sports. But I can appreciate that understanding narratives, understanding stories, can help you understand what's happening on the floor and help you understand why people change teams, why all of these more sort of nitty-gritty sports things. And I've also come to appreciate, especially with the opportunity to reflect on history and spend more time on stuff and make things that are somewhat evergreen, that not everything has to be here's my take on this particular topic, or what, the sort of first take style, was Russell Westbrook wrong to say this thing? I feel very thankful that in the work I do, I am not there is no pressure on me to like take a side or to offer some sort of moral judgment on any of the stuff I'm talking about. And I do that sometimes if I feel it's appropriate, but like, we don't need to invent fights. We don't need to invent debates about things. There's plenty of that already.
Yeah, it seems disingenuous when that type of stuff happens.
Yeah, and you know, there's stuff to argue about. That's not my favorite part of sports.
Yeah, me too.
And I've certainly in prior roles at SB Nation and elsewhere found myself in a place where it's like, no, we need a take on this subject, and like it just doesn't come naturally to me. I mostly am, either things are funny or they're interesting or I don't care, and I'm just never going to feel that strongly about like, was this a good move? Like, was he right to say that he's one of the best players? Like, I don't care.
I'm not a fighter. I'm just trying to write about the Knicks every so often and baseball and basketball.
Was this strange for you at all to go from sort of blog writing to more script writing for the videos, or was it like a seamless transition?
It was mostly a relief. So insofar as that is strange, it was strange because I was for a while doing the Knicks blog where every bit of Knicks news, every game was something that I felt I had to react to. I was the person who, was at my girlfriend's parents' house for Thanksgiving and was like creeping away to go in the basement and use the Wi-Fi to like the Knicks re-signed Steve Novak. I had to like get that out really quick. And then for my actual job, I was the person where a thing happened on TV and I, had to get the memes going and write a script for a video tomorrow and do some tweets and stuff. And like, I just was driven to have that very like all hands on deck mentality. If something happens in the world, I need to go get on the internet, get in Slack, get on Twitter, figure out how we're going to process this. And it took me a little while to unlearn that feeling. It feels really good to be just a Knicks fan. I said to my wife, I think over the weekend, free agency was taking place, and I still follow it religiously, and I still have alerts set up for all the Woj tweets to see the Knicks signed Alec Burks or whatever. But like, I still have a little bit of a reflex to go into blog mode. It's like, all right, what 150 words am I going to say about Alec Burks? And it is continually a delight to be like, oh, I can just keep my thoughts about Alec Burks to myself. I don't have to say anything. I don't even have to form opinions about this. And yeah, like I said, it took a little bit of time to unlearn, but I don't think I could go back to, I don't think I was bad at it. I don't think, if someone were paying me to go back to that, I could figure it out. But I like it better this way, especially because I care so much about the Knicks that having to cover them and having to really be on top of everything and not being able to just like turn off a game when things are really bad or turn away from a news story when things are really bad, that would be tough to go back to, having to really be tuned in.
Yeah, and I asked that because like the majority of my background is in kind of writing. Me and Jaryd worked at the newspaper back at our university, and then I interned at NBC, where a lot of it's obviously script writing, and the style just seems like so vastly different. So that's why I was asking. But I also want to ask, like, since you really followed Knicks free agency last year, did you think the Knicks were going to get Kyrie and KD, or did you think that was just kind of a lot of rumor?
There were definitely moments where a particular tweet or a particular, rumor that everyone was so confident. It's easy to forget at this point, but people, not necessarily for Kyrie, but earlier in that season, people were so certain that Durant was going to be a Knick. People who were dialed in with sources. And so who am I to know better? I have no sources myself, and so I'm inclined to believe.
Did you let yourself get excited about it at all, or were you like, this isn't going to happen? It's the Knicks.
I never feel one way about things, and things change over time. So I would say 90% of the time I knew better. I wasn't excited. But then, someone would fire off something like, I just saw Rich Kleiman and, KD to the Knicks is a done deal. Whatever. There was genuinely stuff like that out there. And like, I don't know. That would be really cool. I was really excited about that. But I think by the time free agency actually rolled along in 2019, I think if you go back to my tweets, I was probably even saying, like, if I was Durant, I would just go to the Nets. Like, if you want to be in New York, play for the franchise in the cooler part of the city that's better run, that like, and you know, that's how that went. But no, I think I definitely had my dark moments where I gave in to getting excited, but mostly I am made entirely of scar tissue and know better than to feel any positive, hopeful feelings about it.
Hey, but congrats on Austin Rivers, and
Listen,
drafting.
We're recording this early enough that the Knicks could go ahead and do something extremely stupid, even like by the time I finish this sentence. But I think most Knicks fans will agree. A summer, even just a first few days of free agency where the Knicks didn't like dramatically embarrass themselves, that's a win. That's a W.
If they had signed Gordon Hayward, would that have been something you were happy about? I read your article and I was wondering if you wanted them to sign Gordon Hayward.
Not really. Let's on one hand, like Gordon Hayward's a good player.
Yeah.
He seems kind of Trumpy, and that
he got a lot of money though.
Oh, he definitely is Trumpy.
Yeah. So that's not my favorite person to root for, but he's good. His presence would not totally throw off the development of anyone that I care about on the Knicks. On the other hand, like, what are you going to do with Gordon Hayward over the next 3 to 5 years?
Give him $40 million.
Yeah, to do what? Like they're not going to win. I wouldn't have been super upset if they signed Gordon Hayward. Certainly, that's money better spent than on some other guys. But yeah, not certainly not upset they let him go elsewhere.
How'd you feel about Obi Toppin getting drafted? Were you excited? Were you like, this is whatever. We have Amari back.
Yeah. As with most Knicks drafts, I was not. That's not who I would have picked. I was not happy with the pick. In fact, I'm pretty sure you could go on my phone and find text messages of, I'm the Knicks friend for people. So on draft night, people are like, who do we want the Knicks to draft? I haven't been paying attention. I'm sure you find yourselves in these sorts of conversations. And I was like, anyone but Obi Toppin, and I'm fine.
Damn.
But like, he seems like a really cool guy. He's excited. He's a talented player. He'll offer something. He really is like a clone of Amari Stoudemire, which is in many ways a positive. If they build intelligently at other positions, it could be a fine pick. Wouldn't have been my pick. I'm not totally freaked out about it, but wouldn't have been my pick.
Who were you hoping they would draft in with that pick?
A guard. I mean,
Tyrese
Halliburton, I would have been on board with. Kyra Lewis, I would have been on board with. If they wanted to go with a wing, like the cell, would have been fine with that. But I've been a Knicks fan long enough that it's just like, just go get the point guard. If there's a point guard, get a point guard. So they didn't even do that with their other picks. I'm fine though.
How does the New York sports team hierarchy go? Does it go like, we know the Yankees are good, the Knicks are like the child prodigy that peaked at 5 years old when nobody remembered, but we still love them anyways, and then it's like Islanders, Mets, like what's the hierarchy?
It's so tough to. First of all, I grew up in New Jersey. I don't think I count as a New Yorker, but it sort of depends where you are and who's doing well. Mm-hmm. It's hard to figure. Like, I've always gotten the sense that as long as the Knicks are good, the Knicks are really up there with the Yankees. Just the Knicks have mostly not been good during my adulthood, so it's hard to gauge. But even just like, Linsanity happens and all of a sudden everyone cares about the Knicks. There have been little moments throughout the last 20 years where it was like, oh yeah, this city is totally ready to care about the Knicks. The Knicks just need to do the bare minimum to earn it. It's always seemed to me like the Yankees are are the most beloved team in New York, and I'm curious how that would be tested if they were terrible for 15 straight years or something like that. But it seems like sort of like Yankees, uh, Jets, and I would love to see a geographic and demographic breakdown of Giants versus Jets.
Mhm.
I have my own theories about who's a Jets fan and who's a Giants fan, and like where in North Jersey where I grew up, there were no Jets fans. It was all Giants fans. I don't know why that's the case. I'm Jewish. I think that Jews tend to be Jets fans. I don't know why that's the case. Long Island, I've always gotten the sense that those are Jets fans, not Giants fans. There's no good reason. They play in the same place.
Yeah.
I don't get it. I'm sure this could be explained somehow. But anyway, I don't know which football team people care about more. I don't care about either of them or any football team. But um, and then hockey is just a less popular sport than the other ones. But it feels to me like Yankees, the Knicks are sort of a floater where people are ready to love them on as much as the Yankees if it comes to that. And after that, I am not an expert on these things.
Yeah, because it feels like a lot of the New York personalities, like there's this comedian, Andrew Schultz. I don't know if you know who Andrew Schultz is. He's like a homegrown New York comedian. He has his own like comedy podcast and stuff. And he's like one of those, diehard Knicks fans. They're yeah, we know we suck, but I just want them to be good again. And it's like, wow, New York really seems like a basketball town, even regardless of how many 20 fucking something championships and World Series the Yankees have. It's like, we want the Knicks to be great. We want them to succeed. And I was like, man, I want the Knicks to be great for you guys too. That'd be nice. That'd be cool. When Carmelo was hyped up, like, what was it, that Easter game when he made those 2 back-to-back threes against Chicago? I was like, I've never seen the Garden like this, like at all. Just that hyped up.
Yeah, like I said, it just doesn't. I've been at games in the middle of 2005 where the Knicks are, already 20-60, but things against the Bobcats are tight. And if, they could get a W here if Chris Duhon makes this shot, and all of a sudden the Garden feels like it's a playoff game.
Yeah.
And that's pretty delusional. And, we might argue that kind of unwavering attention is the reason that someone like James Dolan hasn't been, driven into an early grave at this point. But it's also pretty cool.
Damn, 2005. That's like when Nate Robinson was there.
Yes, it sure is.
Marbury. Yeah. I think that's all that we had to say. Do you have anything else to say, John?
Yeah, I guess something I just wanted to ask about too is, like I said, I read that Gordon Hayward article, and I was talking to Jaryd about this right before you came on. It seems like you have so much freedom to just kind of write, basically however you want to write, like write how you talk to a friend. And I wanted to ask, how refreshing is that for you, especially looking at maybe other sites and seeing that they're not run that way? And then how do people react to that style? Because does that style like help you gain more followers, or what do you think of how people react to it?
Yeah, I am very fortunate to be able to write like myself. You know, as I think I've established, I have very little professional training. I don't. Just no one ever taught me how to write. No one ever taught me any of this. So the only reason anyone has ever liked my work is because they actually liked the way my actual voice. And yeah, I am extremely fortunate. All of us are, to work in a place where we're encouraged to write that way. And I think the quality of our video in particular depends on us not coming off stilted or overly professional, or like we're trying to do a Sports Center impression or any of those things. And when I have been in the position to edit people, I have often said, don't sports write, just write. Because I think there's this tendency to fall into like I said, the sort of Sports Center voice that I'm very glad we don't. Yeah, I feel really lucky. I don't know that it's good for my building an audience and followers. I think Secret Base as a whole, I'm most interested in reaching people and connecting with people who actually sort of get along with my internet presence and get it, and appreciate not just the stuff I'm talking about, but the way I'm talking about it. And I think that means covering topics and writing in a way that isn't necessarily casting the widest possible net, that isn't reaching as many people as I could otherwise. But I think that our mission is not to reach as many people as possible, but to keep people around and to build a community and to want people to sort of hang out with us and talk about sports with us. And I think having a sort of friendly, approachable way of talking about things is part of that, as long as it comes naturally to people. You know, some people really are themselves when they're writing a more sterile or more professional or really objective, straight down the middle style of writing. And I've tried that, and it's just not me. It's not what I'm good at. Like I said, I have no expertise. I have no education in that. So that's part of the reason there. But yeah, you know, I'm glad in a way that you guys noticed that, like, oh yeah, this is not this is not what someone would write on ESPN or The Athletic. This is different. And I am so lucky to get to do that, because it's what I like to do.
All right, we have less than a minute because we're poor and don't have Zoom Premium.
Next time I'll call you.
Okay. Should the Knicks have kept Porzingis? Do you miss Porzingis?
Yes.
Okay. That's all we needed to know. All right. Thanks a bunch again, Seth, for coming on.
Yeah, absolutely. Anytime.
All right. See ya.
Take care, guys.